Svalbard, also known as Spitsbergen, is part of Norway, but Russia has treaty rights to exploit the archipelago's natural resources. Some settlements in the region are inhabited by Russians. Now, many fear their peaceful coexistence is at risk. Our correspondent Alexandra von Namen traveled to Longyearbyen in Spitsbergen, where she met both Norwegians and Russians.
Approaching the archipelago of Svalbard, a region where the frontier spirit is still very much alive. Its biggest town, Longyearbyen, is often called the northernmost settlement on Earth. But even here, people feel the fallout from the war in Ukraine. Ronny Brunvoll is the head of Visit Svalbard, the local tourism board. Before the war, they worked together with a Russian company located in the neighborhood. Now all connections have been severed.
It has been such a tight relationship between people and between companies. So when it all burst out in February 2022, of course it was a tense situation in Longyearbyen as well, amongst the companies.
The Norwegians used to offer tours to the Russian settlements in Svalbard. Now they don't encourage anyone to go there. We visit Arild Olsen, Longyearbyen's mayor. Olsen fears Russia's war on Ukraine could lead to conflicts here too. One reason, he says, is that many residents of the Russian settlements promote the Kremlin's propaganda.
So I see the same things that comes from the official Kremlin also comes from the official Barentsburg. Same but different. And I see the same propaganda machinery going on Barentsburg as in Kremlin.
On May 9, for instance, residents of the Russian settlement of Barentsburg stage a military-style victory parade. Such actions on Norwegian soil are seen as a provocation by many locals. We decide to visit the Russian town. In summer, the only way to get there from Longyearbyen is by boat.
We are now on our way to Barentsburg, but it was quite difficult to find a boat and a captain willing to take us there. Most Norwegian companies appear not to do it anymore, and now we are a bit nervous about what expects us in the Russian settlement.
Barentsburg, with its coal mine and tourism industry, is completely owned and managed by the Russian state company Trust Arctic Ugal. Dmitry Negrudska works for the company just like everyone here. He is our chaperone and won't leave our side during the visit. Pretty fast it becomes clear that people in Barentsburg don't want to talk politics, even though they feel the consequences. They tell us that sanctions imposed against Russia have interrupted their supply chains.
Luckily, thanks to the diplomatic efforts, we managed to come to a compromise and agreement which allowed us to continue bringing the supplies, the food, the equipment. Of course, some of the bans were lifted. Some of them stayed in place. For example, we are still not allowed to bring Russian-produced goods and equipment of some categories.
The Arctic, with its resources and new maritime routes, is crucial for the Kremlin as it tries to expand its influence here. Despite the war, Russia plans to invest in new research projects and tourism. But with tensions rising in the high north, the war in Ukraine could have consequences in regions the Kremlin might not have foreseen.
And for more, I'm very pleased to welcome Sven Holtzmark, a professor at the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies in Oslo. His research includes Soviet and Russian security policy, as well as what is known as the Svalbard Treaty. Welcome. Let's talk first more about this Arctic archipelago and that 1920 Svalbard Treaty. It grants Norway sovereignty with some conditions. Can you give us a bit of background on how that has allowed for international coexistence there?
Yeah, well, to be more precise, the treaty grants Norway full sovereignty, that should be emphasized, and not with conditions, but with certain stipulations, which is an important difference. And one of the more important stipulations related to the principle of equal treatment of state parties and citizens of the state parties regarding economic activity. So in principle, citizens and companies of all state parties, and there are now around 50 parties to the treaty, they have equal rights to conduct economic activity on the archipelago. And that is one of the reasons why the Norwegian settlement, Longyear City, is a very international community.
So if I understand you correctly, any country that is party to this treaty is able to go to Svalbard and use the natural resources there?
Yes, of course, as long as they adhere to Norwegian law. The important point is that Norwegian citizens, Norwegian companies are treated on the same basis as foreign citizens and foreign companies. But of course, Norway has all rights to regulate Svalbard legally.
Okay. Now, into that equation steps Russia. Our correspondent filed a report. She went to speak with some locals in Svalbard who are worried about how Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine could have ripple effects there. Do you share their concerns?
No, I do not actually, because while it's not difficult to see why why the Putin regime decided to go to war against Ukraine. That was a matter of imperial expansion, I would say. I cannot see why there should be similar reasons for Russia to conduct any form of aggressive activity in the high north. They have really nothing to gain by that. As far as I can see, Russia economically and strategically, they will benefit from a stable Arctic. And I really don't expect that to change.
And tell us more about why Svalbard is geopolitically significant to Russia.
Well, I would phrase this otherwise, or in a different way, whether Svalbard is actually strategically significant to Russia. If you mean strategically significant in a military sense, well, the answer is necessarily yes. What is strategically significant to Russia? That is the Barents Sea and the Arctic Ocean. But Svalbard as such, at the moment, I mean, there is no Russian military establishment there. There are no Western military establishment there. There are no bases there, which is, by the way, prohibited by the Svalbard Treaty. So I would actually dispute that statement that Svalbard, that archipelago, is of strategic significance to Russia. It is not. It is the area, the Arctic Sea, the Barents Sea, the Arctic Ocean. Those areas are of strategic significance and of enormous strategic significance to Russia.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise. That is Sven Holtzmark with the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies. Many thanks.
Tobias Sata is a researcher at the Ukraine program at the Norwegian Defense University College. Welcome to DW. Just to be clear here, what are Russia's ambitions in the Arctic?
First and foremost, thank you for having me. The Russian ambitions in the Arctic are twofold. We can say it slightly simplified. The first aspect is related to economic exploitation, economic use. It's related to fisheries. It's related to exploiting natural resources, and it's relating to Russian, but not only Russian, ambitions to use the Arctic Ocean as a transit route for shipping between Asia and Europe. The second aspect is the more security policy related aspect. We can say that for Russia, it means quite a lot to be seen as an important player in the Arctic. Yeah. And also the Arctic, an area in the Arctic close to Norwegian borders, also houses the Russian Northern Fleet with large strategic capabilities.
Okay, so how exactly is I want to just dig in here because it's very interesting how Svalbard is kind of caught in the middle of all of these interests. How is Svalbard instrumental to advancing them?
Yes. So to be clear on the outset, Svalbard is not instrumental, I would say, but it's a part of it because it's part of the geography in the Arctic Ocean. And Russia has been signaling, has been testing, I would say, Norwegian patterns of behavior, reactions by using Svalbard.
Mm-hmm. Under the 1920 Svalbard Treaty, Norway has absolute sovereignty over the archipelago, though. So what are people worried about here?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's correct. It's stated very clearly that Svalbard is under Norwegian sovereignty. It's also stated very clearly that all the signatories of the Svalbard Treaty, which now includes, of course, Norway, but also Russia, are entitled to similar rights on the archipelago. So Russia has a Russia has a settlement in Barentsburg, the second largest settlement on the archipelago. And this is the position, this is the geographical location that Russia is using to enhance its interests, to try to enhance its interests in the archipelago.
But not necessarily a danger toward the Norwegian population there. That was Tobias Satte of the Norwegian Defence University College. Thank you so much.